We're on. We're live on YouTube. Crazy Ride channel, CRC. Richie doesn't like the wheels.
CRC.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
said, CRC.
All right, this is
Can't
sponsored.
keep up with crap.
This is sponsored by A10 New Yorker. Make sure you subscribe. Dean's channel, as well as the Biker's Realtor, which is me. Residential, commercial investments. I'm here for all your real estate needs. 561-507-1454 here in South Florida.
And we got the ex-New Yorker sitting right here.
Did you miss that
It
part?
just came on.
Yeah, I know. We already did that. Way ahead of you, Pops.
That's what CRC can't remember crap.
Aren't we all ex-New Yorkers in reality?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So we got a special guest on from A10 Moto, Nick. Nick's on the line. Hopefully
Hi,
we
Nick.
could hear him okay. It's a little choppy.
But you know, probably.
That's not good.
Yeah, that's
Speak a little slower.
Is that
yeah. So Nick, welcome to Crazy Ride channel. Few of us have bought your lights.
I'm next.
He's next, and tell us a little bit about the company.
all right? Well, hopefully the audio comes in for you guys, right? But we've been in auto since 2022. The release comes right. We're killing.
You know what,
20
Nick, let's
Yes, sir.
let's dial you back in.
Because it's very choppy.
Yeah, it was very choppy. Let me hit that link again, and we'll do it again. All right. Give me a couple minutes,
right.
so I could get you on.
You
So they're gonna talk. You want to talk to Chris?
I could talk to Chris while he does that.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, you want to talk to me?
No.
Chris don't want to talk to you.
Hey, giving him
We're
an
gonna
option.
start already.
All right.
Don't give anybody
All
an
right.
option to talk
This
to you.
is, I want to introduce a very good friend of ours and a top mechanic that I know of. And his name is Chris. He's built a few bikes, and he's very well known in building turbos.
Well,
So,
well known.
well known.
Well known.
Coast to coast.
Renowned.
So Chris, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit
Move
about
in a little.
yourself and your background. And I really myself, because we have a little difficult with phone calls, so we do a lot of texting. So there's not much you could say each other texting. I don't want to be on a text for about 2 hours. So Chris, tell me a little bit about a background about your mechanical learning and ability and how you got into, the motorcycle.
Sure. So, where are we all from? I'm from New York, Staten Island, and I grew up on motorcycles. My father always rode motorcycles, and I grew up around cars. So my father was a motorcycle guy. We always had, hot rod cars or motorcycles around. I was always, growing up on the back of my father's bikes, holding on, and from that day on, I've always been into, something mechanically, meaning building, working on cars, working on motorcycles, even when I was a little kid working on, dirt bikes. So even when I was 14, 13, even in Staten Island, we were running around with dirt bikes everywhere. And even like we talked about it, where we would play around how we get more power out of our carburetors and gas, adding extra gasket thicknesses on ours.
Or another carburetor.
Or another
I
car.
did.
Fortunately, we didn't have the technology we have now out back then. But after that, I started to ride. After that, I started riding both. Actually, I was in a good space because I grew up around Harleys, but I also grew up around street bikes. So I was, back then I had both. I was always running street bikes and I was running Harleys, and I got to work on both. One of the bikes I sent you, I had a Tommy Hilfiger bike in New York.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
and we could bring a picture of that up. But that bike was actually a GS6R 750, and we used to call them 711s. So we used to take the 1127 motors out of the 1100 GS6Rs, like the 1990s and 91s, and we would dump them into the 750 frames. So that's how we were able to correlate the weight difference of the big bikes. And then from there, it was just, I had a bunch of shovel heads, FXCs that we worked on. There we go. So that's the Tommy bike right there. That's actually Tommy Hilfiger on the bike. So that was one of the bikes that I worked on building and, eventually sold to Tommy Hilfiger. But I was tinkering in bikes and cars. Even from that time, I had 67 Camaro, 72 Stingray track cars, and then we moved to Audis. And that's how I really got into turbos, of liking turbos, because at that time we had Audi RS4s, Audi S4s.
And they had the small turbos.
They had the small
on it.
turbos,
Yeah.
and that was interesting. When you bought an Audi, like the S4 or the your S4, you would ship it. You would get the downpipe and exhaust manifolds shipped in, because what came on those in Germany weren't allowed to be imported into the States. So then we would take them. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see.
Better.
Eric is like bouncing back and
But
forth.
you could look at the screen and talk.
Oh, okay. So, is that
There you
better? Thank you, sir. So sweet. So, and at that point, then, I played around with the turbos, playing around with bigger turbos, and got into the turbo cars. And then next thing was just leading on to motorcycles and turbo motorcycles. That was
Well,
where,
what was your first turbo motorcycle?
this was my first turbo Harley, but we played around with adding turbos on street bikes.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we had guys that were like,
So Ninjas and
yeah,
Suzukis and stuff. You were putting the turbos on it.
yeah, we were playing around with turbos on it.
Wow.
I never played around with turbos like on any of the Harleys back then.
No.
But then
Sorry to interrupt. Let me just try and get Nick back on. Okay.
And its screen is black.
Yeah. Second. Nick, can you hear us now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Hey,
yeah,
wow,
much
there we
better.
go.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. There we go.
Right.
Right on.
All right. So tell us about A10 Moto.
All right. We'll continue this in a little bit.
Continue the turbos in a sec.
Oh, I heard that. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Well, a little about us. We are the biggest BA Designs performance lighting company for the V-twin market as of today. We started back in 2022, tinkering around with Harleys and just throwing on BA Designs lights. And hey, this is kind of cool. We saw initially Big Bear Choppers actually came out with a kit, and we're like, oh, that's badass. And at the time we had known a buddy that had just passed away from not being seen on a bike. So we're like, well, how do we get bikes more visible? I mean, even myself as a victim with battle scars from not being seen, I mean, that's kind of why we're here, is for safety. I mean, they look cool for sure, but we're here to allow you to see and be seen. So that's kind of what our motto is really here, and just making badass kits for badass bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us what kits you have out there for the Harleys.
Well, we've got quite a few. Our most popular, as I'm sure you guys know, are the kits for all the 24 style road glides right now, with the dual LP6s and S1s on the sides. Those are our number one selling kit. I cannot keep them in stock. And as you guys know, ordering them, it took a little bit to get them, but
Yeah.
it was well worth it, right? There's that, our Rushmore style kits for the 15 to 23 road glides. Those are super popular. Our Onyx Light Bar kits, which you guys also just did, those are pretty popular as well. And then going to the Softail and Dyna and Sportster models, those are also popular, but definitely the touring bikes is what's keeping us real busy. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I just put together the incinerator. Let me show it.
Yep.
Well, that's a nice name for that.
Burn your
It'll
eye.
incinerate your eyes.
Because it does burn you.
Yeah.
Blind you, actually.
Bring it over more.
You can see it?
There you
Now
go.
you could see it in the screen.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Stay there for a little bit.
All right, it's getting heavy.
Oh, you're a muscle man. Come on.
Ah, look at those
You can,
muscles
you
pop.
can bench press that.
You want me to hold you as you I'll hold you from the leg?
Come on, do some curls with
Yeah,
that.
really.
There you go. There you go. So, Nick, I got a question about these lights. All your
Yes, sir.
lights. Um,
Yeah,
they're very
exactly.
powerful, and I know they're very bright. They're very, very powerful, very bright, and they have a lot of luminous. You know, the
Yeah.
numbers are very high. What is the draw on the battery? Is it a lot higher? Is it the same because they're LEDs or less? That is a question that I always wondered about. Maybe even stop me from buying them, you know. But now they're so popular, there's got to be an answer out there, and I think you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as draw goes, they are going to draw more than your stock system. I mean, as far as like a Signal LP6 to like, the 24 model road glides, I mean, you're pulling with all that light, let's say with, fog lights on your crash bar, you've got, your headlights up on top. With our 24 kits, you've got 6 lights up on top. We're pulling at about 22 amps just with those 2 configurations, fog lights and the headlight kit. So it is significantly more than stock.
What's the stock draw? With all
Stock draw,
those- Yeah.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it is around, if I'm
Just make the
thinking, like,
number. We'll believe it. Don't worry. Just any number. Nobody's gonna know. Pop.
yeah, closer to 10 amps. So you're
10 amps.
gaining about 12 more amps. So that's why we
Okay.
run directly to the battery rather than pulling all that juice through your stock headlight plug, because you'll end up just frying your headlight plug from the factory if you're pulling all that power just through that. So that's why we do a harness that ties into the stock headlight plug to trigger your high and low beam features. And on these new bikes, your high, low, and turn signal function.
Yeah, and I guess as long as your voltage regulator and your batteries are right, you shouldn't have a problem. It'll charge up.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I've been running it for a couple of months. I have no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to when guys are running different, amps, bigger speakers, our light kits, plus underglow, plus this and that, the other. It all adds up, and that at that point you're going to be wanting to run a lithium-ion battery, anyways, to keep up with all that, because a stock lead acid battery is just not going to keep up with that charge rate to,
Right.
accomplish all that power on all those different accessories.
Okay. The ones that Eric just picked up, because I have a 19 Road Glide also,
Mhm.
and I have a wild boar amp, which is also mounted on top of the stereo. And
He's got an 800 watt.
Well, I have 2 amps in the front fairing. One is mounted on the side, like where the vent is, and the other one is mounted on top.
Mhm.
And Eric has a Farscape, and his is mounted on top. These brackets all accommodate to that, because I've noticed in other lights you got to buy extra brackets and for the amps, and one company tells you we don't have it, so you got to cut it. And I've read the reviews, and guys are cutting this thing array. So I'm just, your brackets are bolt on, and this is for the customer that's out there listening too. It's just a bolt on no matter what amp you have.
So it depends. If you're running a huge 2,000 watt amp that's like on your bike, a 19 Road Glide, where it kind of sits right behind the headlight.
It sits on top of the stereo box.
Yeah, like on the
Yeah.
24, they're up on top, so they're completely out of the way of the headlights. But like on a 19 or any 15 to 23 really Road Glide, The
Yeah.
amp's right here, your stock headlights right here. So depending on how big the amp is and where your RCA wires are routed, our bracket can interfere with that. But that's why we do make a amp specific main support bracket for like our dual LP6 kit that goes on your 19 Road
Oh,
Glide.
good. All right. Good.
Yeah. So as
You'll
far
have
as like
you have that
the
bracket. Yeah.
kit that you guys have, we've never had issues with amp clearance, specifically with the light bar kit, just because the top light bar is sitting up here, the bottom's down here. So it gives you plenty of room for an aftermarket amp without running into the bracket system.
I have another important question to ask you, Nick.
What's that?
Water. Okay. So we know that we know that your lights are waterproof, but on the stock, even on the new ones like Dean's or like ours,
Mhm.
it's a sealed unit. So
Yep.
there is nothing getting behind that. Okay. Now on yours and all of them, they're all open. Okay. What's the amount? What's the you know chances that it could be? We live in Florida. We get some
Yep.
heavy rains. Sometimes we get caught up in the middle of it, and you know what's the deal with that? You know what I'm trying to say.
He just wants to ask if their water going to get
He knows what I'm
behind the
trying to
light
say.
there,
He
behind
knows
the
that.
bracket.
Yeah.
No, it's a valid
Instead of
question.
going through all that,
Yeah, just let me ask you. Is any water getting behind the light into my fairing so it's going to short out my shit? That's what he wants to know.
Yes, I totally understand the question, and it's a great question to ask because many folks have that
Oh,
question.
drink.
Depending on the kit, depending on the configuration. For example, let's just go back to the 24 Road Glides. We've made that kit pretty sturdy and large enough to kind of fill in the gaps where your stock headlight would go. Now, yes, there is a chance of water going in there, but all of our connections are watertight, weather resistant. So are all of the Harley Davidson OEM connections. Now, if again, going back to amps, if you're to do something aftermarket and your wiring guy sucks, he's not going to be using waterproof connections. So there is a chance, yes, if the job's not done right, it could lead to problems down the road. It's really hard to make a totally sealed kit like a factory headlight while using oddly shaped lights like these Baja Designs lights.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I get that.
Well, this is the price for looking pretty.
Yes.
Well, this is the price for people to see you.
So
Well, they
Richie's
see
going to
you.
give you his credit card number now. And
That's the invoice.
Hey, listen, I had a quick question on my lights. Now, I got the 23 and a half CVO. I have the other Bajas. I noticed in your video that both side markers blink. You have the top and the bottom are blinking. But when I put these on, only the one blinks and one's a runner. So is there a kit for that or something?
I'm not sure what video you're referencing, but yeah, how we have them set up is the outer S1 pods we run as turn signals or
Right.
hazards. The inner S1 pods are running lights, and then the LP6s are your headlights high and low beam. So yeah, how we've always made them is always been one pair of the S1s being turn signal. He's never ran both as turn signals.
yeah,
Okay.
so whoever
That's-
did that video,
Video had both of them working, yeah.
had both of them
Blinking.
blinking.
Yeah.
So he must have like spliced
He must have
it or
done something, yeah.
some
Maybe that
stuff
was
like that.
an earlier video. I don't know.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah,
do
I know it's not us, but I know there's a guy out in Thailand that's pretty much making similar kits as us, and he does crazy stuff with wiring.
Right.
So he makes stuff strobe, he makes flicker, just all sorts of cool stuff. But
I don't
we
need
don't
that.
we don't like to get into that because then you're not going off your bike's stock controls anymore. You're putting another module in there to
Switching.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious because I saw that in an instructional video you guys had out. I don't even know if it was, I'm pretty sure it was that, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was that.
Yeah, man, somebody else was
It could be.
putting
It
it
could
together.
have
It
been.
could've
I
been
think it
somebody.
was someone else.
But yeah, both of them were blinking. So, but now
Yeah.
I'm happy with the light. I
Right
drive
on.
people crazy.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to putting mine
I
on.
let him ride in front now.
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm like
And
Rudolph
I
the
shut-
Red-Nosed Reindeer
And I
when
shut
I'm
my
riding.
lights off, so I don't have to worry about my battery.
Oh, jeez.
Dad being efficient.
Yeah. Saving battery
All I'm thinking
power.
about is you guys like the wild hogs with your new lights.
Don't make us break out the leathers.
A10 is sponsoring the new Wild Hog 3 movie.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, where do I
Go.
my side?
So Nick, so where do you guys stand now? You know, there's been a couple of companies out now, really, that's started at the Bajas and this. So, how are you guys looking to maintain and customer service, like separating not fall into some of these pit holes that other companies fall into, that we've seen over the last couple of years. I mean, I've seen your product. A lot of my friends rock it. Jess
Yeah,
131. Russ is a good friend of mine. Jess, my friend Tiny, he just, we've ordered them for you. So everybody's rocking them. I guess the question is just maintaining. How do you maintain that space, keep customer service active, and making sure that because what we've seen in the past with a lot of companies, they get big, customer service falls off, or the next trend comes in. I mean, R&D stuff like that. You guys are looking at stuff in the pipeline, or just always on top. What's moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your point with customer service, I'm the guy that handles all that. I don't let anyone mess with that because it's my face on the social media, on the YouTubes, on the this and that, the other. I want to make sure that you as a customer are being taken care of how I would want to be taken care of. And if I have to have one of my guys step in for me, I expect them to do the same or better than I would offer as far as customer service goes. I kind of pride myself in my customer service being, a cool guy to talk to and not some D-bag that, just picking up the line that doesn't want to talk to you because he's got better things to do.
Or the guy that's worried about water in the back. I get it. I mean, those guys are tough. I understand that.
Now we're talking to him too and let him know going on. I'll spend an hour and 20 minutes on the phone with someone, making sure they know every single detail about what they're buying. Most
Yeah,
guys,
I
they
mean,
just,
I called them up a few times already, to find out where my order was and this and that. And he was always nice and gave me the right answers.
Now, you guys,
Yeah.
I didn't look on the website recently, but have you guys moved into the Indian space as well, or is it just strictly the Harley right now?
yeah, we definitely do Indians. Our selection for Indians is kind of small. Here in Southern California, it's a little hard for us to actually get our hands on an Indian and do testing on it. We actually had to buy an Indian Challenger just to make a kit for it.
You can go to the
So here I have the website up. There you go.
There we go.
You can go to a reservation and do that.
Yeah. Here in Southern California, like a Softail Breakout. Not many guys ride breakouts, but the guys do want. They're the new choppers pretty much. So they want components on their bikes, and we finally just found a guy that had an M8 breakout to do testing on because their triple tree is completely different. So borrowed it for a couple weeks and hooked him up on a kit. And we're putting that in production. Same thing with like the new 24 Street Glides here in Southern California. It's road glides. You see road glides everywhere. You see Dynas and you see M8 lowrider S's everywhere. But that's all you see. So a 24 Street Glide, we've got that in the works. There are some guys out on the market already, but that's the thing with us is we're not just some other guy. We're the best kit on the market, so we're going to make it look the best, perform the best, all the above. So that's what's keeping it. Going back to your question, that's what's keeping us, ahead of the game. Really, is our innovation with new products and how we actually make them.
I gotta say, at Daytona, there was like a line for your
Yeah,
lights. I mean,
Yeah,
when I got up to the line, they were like kind of sold out. So I just had the guy ship it to me. Had you guys ship it to me. So
yeah,
it was
and that was. I remember you when
very
you came
popular.
in the rally. You had spoken to Randy, and he's trying to ship it directly to you. But yeah, we're after Daytona, we sold out of so much product. It was hard for us to catch up initially, but now we're kind of up to speed, getting stuff out the door now.
Right, right. So where's your next event that you'll be at?
So for us, since we're a smaller operation, we're not as big as, let's say some exhaust companies on the market or some other guys on the market. So we try to do the major rallies. So
Right.
the big, you've got Sturgis, you've got Daytona Bike Week, you got Biketoberfest and Arizona Bike Week. Then we do a couple small ones here and there. We do
Right.
Galveston. We do what's that Four Corners Rally. Last year we did Panama City, and it just the cost getting out there and to pay all of our 6 employees that we bring,
Sure.
it's really worth because we're pretty much bringing the whole shop when we go to a rally.
Right.
So it's kind of hard for us to do every single rally. We'd love to because doing the rally circuit in the past, that's where you meet great people like you guys. Build relationships with folks. But yeah, the next rally we're doing is Sturgis, followed by Four Corners Rally in Colorado, and then Galveston in Texas to finish off the season.
Oh, you have Biketoberfest.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, Biketoberfest too. Unless another hurricane comes through, then I
Oh,
might
yeah,
screw.
yeah.
no.
Do that.
We don't speak those words
Bike
here.
is
Yeah.
You got to make these
Every
guys.
year,
We got to
you
make
can't
these
get
guys go to a different bike rally. Let's
Yeah.
get somewhere past
Past
Daytona.
Florida. Yeah.
yeah.
Virginia Beach.
So that's the plan for this season.
But Galveston would be a good bike week to ride up to.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Texas.
Oh, I don't- I'm from New York. I only speak Brooklyn like him.
Galveston, Texas.
Galveston.
It's either the Bronx, the Queens, or
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Staten, Italy over here.
Staten, Italy. Staten Albanian. But where in San Diego, you guys located?
So Baja Designs is located in San Diego. We're located in Orange County, just about 80 miles north of Baja Designs warehouse in Placentia, which for folks that don't know where anything is in Southern California, we're by Disneyland. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Any other questions?
Richie, gonna get one?
I'll be talking to Nick privately.
You know what? No. He's gonna wait and see how Eric's bike works out.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
more he
He's
gets
gonna
behind
want to
his
see
ferry
mine
first,
first.
He wants to
you
see
know.
Eric go through a rainstorm and then he'll
Right.
decide.
Yeah.
See, Nick, I have a 19, so I like Eric's lights, but I won't get the ends because I don't want to take. I still have my flippers on the vents that open and close, and down here when it rains, you can actually shut the vent.
Yeah.
And it'll keep the rain out because that vent goes right into your chest. So
It's not
Yeah.
like you're gonna get wet anyway,
or the
right?
bugs, you don't
flippers.
get wet. I've
The
taken.
flippers.
You don't get wet.
I've shut them. I call them flippers. It's
On
the
our-
vent
on our-
doors. The vent doors. So on these lights, you got to pull out the boxes. So
You can,
by
the
pulling,
Onyx bike can
ahead.
either remove the vents or you can trim the vents. We just typically remove them. But on like the LP6 kit with the 2 round LP6s, the S1s on the sides are an add-on. You don't necessarily need to get them. So if you just wanted the 2 headlights, you could run those guys, keep your vent functionality. And the one nice thing about our Rushmore style LP6 kit for the 15 to 23 road glides is that is the kit that we've been known for the last 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and that's watertight kit as well. We do include like a rubber strip up on top, so that
Oh.
way
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's not talking about the ones I have.
Well,
He's talking about the round ones.
The round ones? Yeah.
Those are the LP6s.
I like the round ones too.
there you go.
Well, now you're gonna hit his website
Yeah.
later.
I like the round ones too because before these, I was going to get the round ones, and then I saw that, but I'll make a decision. I'll wait till he puts his on.
Hey, are you guys coming out with flipper lights?
Flipper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flipper lights for Richie.
Pop's available for any
See, he has
marketing.
a 20. He doesn't know the you know,
Yeah, I don't have
the
that.
flipper door on them. You know, he doesn't have that
A little better.
exclusive. That was exclusive. It was an
That was
option.
made for Richie, custom made.
It was an option.
Harley ex-CEO designed it for him,
Yeah.
and then he got fired. And that was the end of the Harley.
Thank
Can
God.
pass.
Good riddance. But
Yeah, that's
there you
exactly,
go.
flipper.
Yeah, flipper.
Dad's also hired for marketing, so if you need any marketing ideas, Dad's available for contracting.
There you
He's
go. We'll do
retired, so you can take him anytime you want. We'll ship him out to Southern California.
Listen, I
One
One
sell.
way.
One way.
I'm all about sales. Sell. If you watch our videos, I'm always pushing the product that we're, advertising or showing. The same thing with the Baja lights. They've been great. I mean, Chris has already told you several people, and down here, trust me, everybody's running Baja lights. There's no
Yep.
Baja down here, but they're all running Baja lights because the people that drive down here, they don't see too well.
Yeah,
So
right.
you
See me
need that
now.
light.
So now they won't see it all because
Yeah.
they'll be
There
blinded.
it is.
He just
What happened?
flashed it. He just flashed it.
No, that was me.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did make a video for the incinerator kit, and
First video. Nobody
because
has one out there.
there weren't any real videos out there of assembling it. So I put a video out there for people that are curious how to do it. I mean, it's kind of simple, but there are a lot of screws and stuff like that in the packages, and I just kind of specified everything.
The video's free for anybody that has
Yeah,
cards
so
over 50.
it's on YouTube. It's for everybody over 50.
Well,
I'll just join the party. I made a video of mine too, putting the assembly together.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is big. I mean, you guys put we did one for our friend Bob. We put his on, but he paid to have it already pre-assembled, which that saved like a good hour or so.
Yeah,
Made the
that's the
installation a lot better.
part is just putting it all together on the bracket system. But once it's all together, it's just take your stock headlight out, put that one in. Once the harness is ready.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Which isn't that bad of a deal either.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
an
they-
easy build. It was an easy build when we did it. We filmed it on yours.
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
we? Yeah.
We didn't do Bob.
We didn't do
No,
Bob's because
we
we
should.
already had.
I still it was a different bike. Should have done it.
was that the video you did without your glasses?
Yes.
Okay. Just
I
wanted
didn't
to-
need my glasses because I've been around bikes so
marketing.
long. I could do it blindfold.
I think that's a good marketing for A10.
Yeah, blindfold me. You'll see.
Even at the
No, you
even at
can't.
the age
Blindfolded.
80 that you can do without glasses. That's how intuitive their kits are.
Nick, I've
Nick.
been riding since 1969.
Tell them how many miles.
and
That's
I've
when
been
I was
building
born.
I know.
bikes in the 70s. And I was actually in touch with all the Ness and all the big guys, McCuney Carburetor, because we didn't have this at that time. You'd make a phone call, there was no texting, and that's how you communicated.
Tell them how many
So,
miles, Pops.
these
Tell them how many
kids-
miles.
What I forgot, they haven't done yet.
Yeah.
Tell them how many miles. But
Which he can't remember.
And
but let them tell them how many miles have you rode. That's the honest
I've
truth.
been in California twice from New York. I've covered every state in the United States twice.
Twice.
There you go.
And I
That's a lot of
never
riding.
Oh,
trailed the bike.
Now, if you had A10 Moto lights,
You could have seen where you were
forget
going.
it.
I could have driven all night and all day.
Make it happen.
Could do more miles.
That's right. So, but yeah, those are the lights to buy. The Bajas
they're
are the
great
way to
lights.
go.
I love
They
them.
are definitely the way to go.
Hey Nick, one suggestion, man. With these lights, I think you should be giving out a free pair of sunglasses, man. They're killer. Seriously.
I guess those little Chinese
That's
ones.
why
Maybe.
he's wearing them. Transition.
Nick, I'm
Yeah,
serious.
transition.
I ride behind them now when at night. Yeah. But I like riding behind them because I could see everything. It's like being in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, you really don't notice how bright these lights are until you're actually behind someone that's got the lights.
Yeah.
You're like,
That's the truth. That's definitely the
Yeah.
truth. And how clear and how far out you could see. You know, it's got to be like 2 football fields.
please, please, with high.
You won't be able to see those cop car lights coming
Yeah.
at you, right?
Yeah, right. Flying them too. No, anyway. But
Well,
no,
Nick, it was
they are the way
thank
to
you
go.
for coming on.
Nick, thank you.
Thank you. We love the lights.
Yeah, the light's great, man.
And I'm looking forward to putting mine on. And thanks for taking the time.
You
to
could
come on.
use our videos, our assembled videos, for your websites in case you know you want to drop them in as people are looking at your products, and then they show the actual install. And as Eric did, he put that set together. What's that set called again?
The incinerator.
The incinerator.
It's a nice name because
The
How do you spell that?
incinerator. Yeah,
it burns, baby.
love it. I love it.
Well, thank you, Nick.
Nick, thank you very much. I appreciate you very much.
For you guys that you guys are loving your kits. I'm glad to spend a little time chit chat with you guys. And hopefully we can do some more later down the road too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I'm a customer.
He
Oh
is
my.
now.
He'll be reaching
You
out
got
to
it
you.
on
pretty
video.
soon.
He's a customer.
Yeah. Proof.
All
All
right, Nick. Thanks
I'm
for
gonna
your
go
time. And we'll
start
talk
answering
soon.
Also, you guys have a great rest of your night.
You
You
too.
too,
Take
Nick.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool. Lights are great.
So,
That's gonna look sinister on your bike. That is gonna look fantastic.
We're using a lot of
Yeah.
fancy
Oh,
words tonight.
Stacy's on. Hi, Stacy.
hi, Debbie.
Incinerator.
Debbie,
Gonna
you're
look
on
very
too.
Stacy wants
Sinister.
to know.
We
Hey,
can't even spell
Richie,
these words
weren't
that
you
were
riding
thrown
on
around.
the
kidding.
buggy
I
yet?
That's right. That's
And I
right,
haven't even started
Stacy.
drinking.
You didn't even drink. Hold on.
I started with a horse and buggy.
That's right.
That's exactly what you started with.
Yeah, I
I
like that.
started. She's cute. She's cute. Hi, sweetheart.
That has original
Deb.
chaps.
I didn't get a chance to go on. They rushed me, so they
Is that your
they
bike on
abused
there?
me here. What?
Oh, look how nice that would look sinister on your bike.
I know.
Is that your new word?
With the incinerator. Yeah, I'm just sticking with it
You're
right
just running that word.
now. But look, man. Oh, look out. Microphone went down. Look, there's his bike. Put those headlights on there and boom.
Yeah.
Sinister.
Sinister.
Sinister. Today's word is sinister.
Sponsored by Men's Diapers.
Crown Royal.
It depends.
Well,
It depends.
Yes, for your long
For your
rides,
long
and you don't
rides,
want to get off your
Your
bike.
incinerator with your dependable.
Yeah, whatever you want to call that. Never have to stop again and take a pee while you're riding.
So we have a bunch of pictures here of you and Brandy.
Yes, my beautiful wife.
Yeah,
Over here.
I want to continue our conversation.
Let's go to the pictures.
I
Well,
wanna
the pictures
continue
are
our
here.
Yeah.
It's a
conversation.
delay for that. So,
5.
no, explain to them on here. Can you see that?
I can't see anything.
None of us can see.
I'm all the way over here.
There we go.
There
It's
you
on- we just had to wait a little
It's on
bit.
the monitor now.
No,
All right, so where we explain. So we'll go from the beginning. So
Top left.
turbo bike. So that's my 2050 Rushmore bike that had probably been uplifted, facelift about 20 times, but now absolutely doesn't even look like that. But that's the beginning of the turbo bike. Again, that motor, it was sent out. A1 Mike Beelan, who's amazing.
Yes.
Can't recommend if anybody's interested in getting cranks done or solid work. Mike Beelan from A1 Motors does amazing work on cranks. So the crank was sent out to Mike. Mike did the crank on that bike, did the headworks and the 107 kit on the upgrade from the 103 with the Trash Turbo on that. And it did well. Did a long time. I ran that for a while, a couple of years with the Trash Turbo, Mike's, the built motor. And it ran great. Just, down in Florida, as we all know, that it gets hot down here. So
Yeah.
running turbos, it's true. So when everybody asks you running a naturally aspirated motor, versus running a turbo motor, the turbo does add a lot of heat to the bike. More than what there's no way around it.
Have you thought about everybody now? Some people I've known that, and I actually see it, they're running 2060 weight oil now. Amsoil sells it.
Yeah, if you look at the Harley manual, Harley talks about running heavyweight oil in the summer too. It's recommended actually
really?
in the Harley. Yeah. So whenever people ask about these questions, even in Harley's magazine, in their manual, it states about how when the heat
Speedway.
rises to
Yeah.
change the weight of the motor. But what happens is on turbos, right? One of the big factors is from just the amount of heat that's brought into the turbo, the oil also. So these are oil turbos, obviously, right? So what made me change from there to go to a comp turbo, like we talked about last
Yeah.
year, I installed a comp turbo on the bike and ran an oilless turbo. Made a big difference on the heat. Probably reduced the heat by over 100 degrees
Wow.
Big.
by not using oil in the turbo. Comp has a great product that where you can they have like a I guess an aviation like
Oilless bushings.
yeah they use a special oil loop that you inject,
that you inject.
yeah,
in.
you put into the turbo like every 3 to 4,000 miles. You do about 3 pumps into the fitting, and it's interesting because I don't know if they did. I don't know if Comp came up with the design or an aviation company that they use, but whatever. But if you even overfill it, it like disintegrates, like it just dissipates.
Oh, okay.
So even if you had too much, like you put too much grease in it,
It
doesn't cause
matter.
an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
So it just even it comes out at this phase. So,
Yeah.
but we noticed a big like over 100-degree weather.
Wow.
There's a guy out of I think he's out of San Diego. RPM, Real Power Movement. He does a bunch of kits now for like he does mostly M8 motors and doing a lot of turbos outside of the 121 that we
Yeah.
talked about. But and he's seen some big numbers with the comp turbo as well as the 100 degrees cooler.
Wow.
It makes a big difference, especially in Florida.
So when you say 100 degrees, let's say the bike is running at 260. I'm just saying, and um, this one here is running at what temperature?
It's not just a matter of the heads we're talking about. We're talking about the turbo
the
itself, the
turbo
housing. The
itself.
turbo pulls, right? Because you have a hot and cold side to a turbo, right?
Yeah.
So you think about that, right? It has a hot and turbo. Like even looking at like if you look at many years ago, like when Mercedes in the Formula One, right? So they did the hybrid turbo. So they came out. I think that was 2016. They actually made a new motor called a hybrid turbo. They took the hot side and the cold side of a turbo, separated them, right? So they took the turbo, took it apart, put the hot in the back, cold in the front, ran a rod through the engine to separate the hot and cold sides.
Okay.
Right? That's what made them back then. A lot of people moved to that, but that's what made they won about 3 to 4 in a row with that design until people started. So that shows you how much the heat controlling the heat on a motor, right? Because think about it. If we were to take our bikes out and race, naturally aspirated turbo, and they're cold and we start off, right? We run, right? We got power. As the day goes on in the heat, the more hot the motor is, the less power we produce.
Right.
Right.
With
So
expand.
controlling the heat on all aspects in the heads, like, running, the, what do they call them again? The love jugs,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
love jugs,
running love jugs, running, running the oil
the
coolers.
fan in the front.
Yeah. All that is just to reduce heat, not just Harley has the fan in the back for the,
You have that on yours. The fan in the back,
Yeah,
under the
behind
seat. Yeah.
yeah, that one's more for the passenger. That
Yeah.
just pulls the heat from the head out and pulls it down.
Right. Yeah.
It really
right.
doesn't change the
temperature
ambience
of the motor.
the
Right.
motor.
Right.
So all that is to do to reduce the heat, right, from the motor. So running an oilless turbo is a big difference on the motor. I wear shorts and it wouldn't bother me.
Really?
Really.
Yeah, and not that I ride with shorts, but I just
Yeah.
just
I've
for-
seen you ride.
you
with
never see
I've seen
with compression socks.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
you too.
embarrassing.
Compression
compression
socks
socks.
and your grandpa diapers. Come on.
You heard that first.
Yeah.
Sinister. I have my sinister socks.
With
He was wearing
shorts.
his girdle too.
Shorts with
His
shorts.
sinister
And-
girdle.
It's the girdle.
It's
It's
the
Get a paint
girdle
job now that says
Come on.
and compression
sinister.
socks. Wow, that must be a
Uh,
sight. I want a picture of that.
Well, it's funny because like we spoke about earlier with with guys now, there's natural aspirated motors nowadays, running high, 11 compression. It's different than it was
Back
many
in the
years ago,
day.
back in the
Yeah,
days with
right.
shovel heads, pan heads,
Right.
the Evo twin
Yeah.
cams, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about 2-valve motors versus a 4-valve motor now with the 4-valve motors, they love a lot of air, right?
Yeah.
So like we talked about this, where when you used to play around with twin cams, or you try to go with a larger throttle body.
Yeah.
With too large of a throttle body,
Get over.
you would get two, would be a problem. But
Right.
we know in the 4-valve M8s, they like a lot of air, right?
Yeah.
You could throw big, large throttle bodies at them.
Yeah,
and
I
they like
know.
the air different.
Yeah.
So
You're
that,
right.
when you get guys like Mike, you get guys like George, from All American. We see these guys, building these naturally aspirated motors now. It's people. We talked about Harley, what direction they went to, and people talking about, like you guys talked about it last week, where they're woke and all this stuff. But
what's your opinion?
so my opinion is it's impossible to understand how a company has to develop financial, right, and make money, right? So when you look at companies like Harley, Indian, but specifically Harley over the generations, of trying to establish financial gains, right? It's not just about, you hear these people say, oh, you go on the forums and they're like, I want to get a guy that rides the Harley, he's got the bandana on, he's at the bar with us, he's smoking cigars, he goes to all the rallies. But like we talked about, that those guys aren't going to develop money, right? There's investors in the company. The company has to make money.
Yeah.
And making money doesn't mean that you're going to have the guy that's our best friend, like one of us running the company, right? It has to be somebody that understands how to develop, where the financial gains will be, who can sit on the board, how can we develop a product? We talked about this early before we got on the podcast.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
I don't think Harley's woke. I think Harley made a lot of good moves. I think one of the biggest problems is a generational problem. Like we talked about, the
You
ages.
don't think they're pricing themselves out?
I don't, you guys, Dad, you've been around a long time. How many times have we heard, I'm 51, 52, 60? Paul, how old are you?
62.
62.
Thank you.
Are you?
Yeah.
62?
Yeah.
You look phenomenal,
Thank
by the way.
Hey.
Just wanted to throw that out there. Dad,
Sinister.
60. Sinister. But, like, remember 25 years ago, like, how many guys used to make fun of the guys that buy the CVO, right? I'd never buy a CVO.
Yeah, too expensive.
It's always,
Yes.
CVOs have always been priced high.
Yep.
Right? Always. In Harley's, in their catalogs forever, right?
Right.
I mean, look at some of these bikes today. Like, if you look at CVOs, they're still priced high.
They are.
The used ones, right? A CVO, that was like a staple. Like, if you had money, you retired, you bought a CVO,
Yeah,
right?
that was the
Steady
ultimate
income.
bike.
Yeah. It was the ultimate bike.
Right.
But you had guys, like yourself and stuff that retired, and they got pensions and they developed, they have financial income. They retired, they got 401ks, pensions. They can buy a CVO. They would buy Harleys. They have the money. We don't have that same demographic no more. The generation has changed. The younger generation has moved on to different, types of jobs. They moved on to, more Instagram and social media, making money.
Yeah.
So when they, we don't know what the future of that stands for, but we know the future of a guy that may be retired at 25 years. He knows he's going to have, $5,000-$6,000 a month or $8,000 a month. He knows where he sits financially.
Yeah.
We don't have it no more. So to say that Harley's woke, they're not woke.
No,
They're just
I never
fighting
thought
a.
they were, but-
I think they're fighting a generation
Yes,
problem.
and they're looking to grab other people. I mean, you got to grab everybody.
Yeah.
If you're hemorrhaging, you got to stop the bleeding. Right?
You got to stop.
I mean,
Well, you got to make
you have
money,
to
right?
reach out to everybody.
And you're trying to develop. See how do you sell bikes to a generation now that doesn't have the best income coming in, right?
Yeah.
We don't we don't have that people make money, but I've seen it all the time. How many of these guys buy bikes? They go into Harley, and they're all gun ho. They get in there, they sign that document, right? They're like so excited. 3 weeks later, they get their first payment, or maybe their payment's deferred for the first month, and the next payment coming in is $800 a month, right?
More than a freaking car, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is, right? Because it's different. We bought bikes, and it was different when we were younger too. We bought, we didn't have beggars weren't a big bike back then.
No, I wouldn't even consider that. Was an old
You know,
man's bike.
No,
know,
Sportsters, low riders.
low riders.
My
Yeah.
first bike was a Sportster. I went into Harley in Hempstead,
Then
Long
soft
Island.
tails came
I
out.
went to go get a low rider or something, or a soft tail, and I go in there, it was $15,000. I'm like, I want $15,000. I ended up buying $8,000 883.
883.
Yeah,
But that's always been right.
but
So
that was my bracket. I
Yeah.
couldn't afford it.
you had a
that
Sportster. You're right. You had a soft tail.
Figured I'd bore it out, make it the way I want, get it to a 1200,
Yeah, you had once they came in once in a while with the newer touring bikes, but that wasn't the bread and butter of Harley. Bread and butter of Harleys were the soft tails, or
Fat Boys,
Fat Boys, the Diners, the
Wide Glide, Springers,
And think about it too. You think about like even a lot of clubs that rode back in the day, right? you know, the theory about, what kind of bike you had was you didn't really have big bikes or baggers. You were trying to split the lanes,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? You were trying to get on the
They
highway,
had
horsepower,
slim bikes.
to get away. Like, like go through like New York City when I rode.
Oh,
I would never ride a bagger in New York.
No.
Yeah.
Remember, going over the Verrazano
No.
Bridge, going through the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Midtown Tunnel was great.
Midtown Tunnel, just split the lane and go straight across.
Yep.
But a big bike, right?
Yeah.
So those weren't that, right? So now we have Harley's bread and butter is baggers, and baggers aren't cheap.
They're expensive.
You
But
know,
you're right about the price. I mean, CVOs would always way out
they're
of price
always
for everybody.
expensive
Well, for me anyway.
for all of us,
Yeah.
right?
All of us.
Maybe
yeah.
like later on, like if
I was in my 50s before I ever got a CVO.
but that's what I'm talking.
That's where my money started growing.
That's where your money kicks in, right?
Right, yeah.
So that there's a place for that. We don't have a place no more for that.
No.
There's more in a new bike now too. Technology.
Correct.
and
Yes,
all
they
that
are
kind
giving
of
you a
stuff.
lot more.
So that adds to the price.
Correct. I mean, if
You
you look
know?
at the big change over from the Rushmore from 2014 when Harley introduced the Rushmore, right? When they went to a wider front end,
Yeah.
they went to the BCM, they went to a CAN bus system, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now on the 14 to now, you have an ECM, ECU, and you have a BCM, right?
Yes.
And then the CAN bus system, which is not a Harley invention, right? Because a lot of companies, a lot of switching CAN buses have been around a long time. It's a a loop system. So the CAN bus goes to the BCM, controls that, right? So all this new technology costs money, right?
Yeah.
And you get into the newer bike like
The
yours,
research,
It's
yeah.
got- Yeah.
So,
three
like-
amp, three.
people got on Harley CEO, but I think the new bikes are amazing. I thought these newer bikes look good. They answered a lot of the requests. Like, if you go to this like a CVO ST, you can get the shocks, you get the inverted front end.
Yeah.
Oh, big difference just in that alone, especially on that.
But this is the problem with the community, right? They're like, oh, why don't you make a performance bike? And then they make a performance bike and they say they want this much money, and they're like, oh my god, they're woke. But like, right? Like, how can you?
How can you charge me that much?
Well, think about it.
ST.
Say you buy a base model. Let's say you buy a base model Harley, right, with nothing. Let's say you
That's
without,
what I did.
yeah, what you did.
I bought the Road Glide Limited. Yeah, it
a
did
little bit,
have
yeah.
everything, but at first I wanted to get the CVO.
We all do.
Okay, and the CVOs weren't doing it for me. So I saw my bike, and I said, hey, why don't I get that bike and just throw an engine in it? And I put a lot more stuff into it, which kind of made it like a CVO.
Correct.
The same price.
Well, the theory used to be, why spend the money on a CVO, right? The older CVOs, because let's not use the newer 24, like these. Let's go back to the Rushmore. CVO, you get a paint job, right? Like back then, it was like only custom paint job, right? And the big motor. But then we realized as these bike builders came out, like Mike and Steve, all these guys came out, George, and even guys before George. And George is amazing, but you have a bunch of guys before George too.
Big time.
You have Kirby and these guys. There's been a lot of builders over time. We realized the money it costs you to build a CVO, you can build a stock bike and be faster and better than the price for the CVO and get a custom paint job.
Yeah.
But now what's interesting is, if you were to take a stock bike, right, and then you go out and buy an inverted front end for it, right? Let's say from Kraus, right? $6,000, right? So what's the base Harley now? 20 something?
27?
20. No.
Like 24. Say 24.
25. Yeah. 24.
Fat boy's more than the bagger? Holy shit.
Yeah. So you buy a $24,000 bike. You want an inverted front end. 6,000, right? So you're at 30. Then you want the reservoir, shocks in the back, and that's another 11, 12, 14, 15,000, right?
Right.
And then you throw in the crash bars, this, that, and that. The next thing you know,
$5,000.
you're easily 20 grand into a bike.
Right.
Yeah.
So when they said Harley make a performance bike, they built a performance bike. And I'm not saying it's the best one, but they did answer it. And then when they say, okay, you got to pay extra for the inverted front end, you're going to pay a little bit more for that and that and that.
Right. Well, it all adds
It all adds
and
up.
at the MSRP, not these guys tagging on 10, 12,000.
But that's in any business, right? Go to a car dealer and try to buy, a car that's comes out that's not that's souped up or rare.
Like a Hellcat.
A Hellcat or something. When they came out, 10 grand over. a sticker.
Yeah, they were
10
all asking
grand
over
over.
sticker.
That's just the part of that's and that's what I think people don't realize. Like they and there's two parts of the business of Harley. There's Harley corporate, and then there's the dealers, right? And those are two separate entities, and really
There's
think
no
about it.
control on that.
Right. So
Yeah.
a Harley dealer can turn around, the Harley corporate, and can tell a dealer, you have to take all these CVOs, right? Or that's like toll to them. So they might have to take on 7 CVOs, right? And now they're stuck with 7 CVOs, right? So there's a big game
Yeah.
that most consumers don't see
Yeah,
between
I
the
know.
dealer and Harley corporate, that they're trying to, like, if they force them to take on 20 bikes, now they're stuck with 20 CVOs,
Right.
right? That they can't get rid of, right? And now they have to figure out ways to recoup that money. So it's a like anything else, it's a domino effect.
It's a
Yeah.
shift.
It's a shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't like it, but yeah.
How
I
many people-
understand.
It's like real estate.
Yeah. Well, how many times when the M8 2017 M8 came out, I couldn't tell you how many people I heard, oh, it's the worst bike. M8's a terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you'll never have the sound of a Harley again, the twin cam
Oh yeah,
or the
you'll
Evo.
never get that. I remember
I'll
hearing
never
that.
buy
Yeah.
an M8. I
It won't
heard
sound like an Evolution engine.
they're gonna go under. Nobody's gonna buy them. They're gonna hate them. And it wound up being a great motor.
Yeah.
It took a couple of years. Like
Yeah.
17 had some issues, the oil
Yeah.
pump.
18 had some issues.
Richie,
18?
Richie found that out.
19, early 19 had something.
Yeah, but or the something, but they figured it out, and then they came out with the 121s, and we're going, which brings us into what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
What is that?
What are you doing?
What are you doing next?
Oh, I'd love to do a 135.
There we go.
I started my GoFundMe page. We only got $3. Nobody wants to
I'll throw
contribute.
5 in
Ah, there you go. I got 8.
And that brings me to the funny part of the whole story, right? You think about like this 121, and whether it's a variable valve timing, which we know they didn't take off, right? So that was one thing that Harley tried. Now variable valve timing's been out in cars forever, right? It's just not taking off yet, with the Harleys. But the good news is you can remove it, But like 121 motor with a 135 Screaming Eagle kit, maybe with the right cam, and a little this and that, we're seeing 170 something horsepower, 170 torque on that motor,
That's huge.
Wow.
running smooth,
On
not running,
an 800-pound bike.
and a 100-pound bike running. It doesn't run as hot as some of these other bikes are running. So, it's there. It's just a matter of, if we thought about the twin cam to the M8 going to full valve, if everybody complained this sucks, Harley's going under, we wouldn't have these motors that are being built and the fun things we'll do about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Harley? Is it? Do you think someone's gonna save it, or?
I think we're gonna have a like, I almost feel like we're gonna go back into the we might, I don't know if we'll fall back into the, what do you call it, the 70. What year did during the Shovelhead that AM
Oh, AMF?
I-
That was in the 70s.
right,
Yeah.
when they took over and got Harley, they took over for like a year. I forget how many years they took over, right, during the Shovelhead time, and actually took Harley to the was able to gap them and move them on to the next. They didn't let them fail. I think we might see something like that.
Yeah, it's a big business to fail.
We're also in a bad time, right? We don't, what most kids in the Harley community also sometimes, and there's a lot of guys that understand this, but we're in financial times, right? Right. We're in a kind of in a weird space with financials and big, where the market's weird right now, and there's a lot of shit happening. So that affects,
That's
things.
everybody.
It affects everybody.
Everything.
So it's affecting.
Yeah.
What's
Cars,
the first thing that
bikes.
goes?
Toys.
Yeah, toys. So like if there's
Boats,
people holding
cars,
their money, like interest
bikes.
rates are high for houses, right? So you see this in effect where,
Right.
interest rates are at 6 something per se, and the housing market in Florida hasn't come down, right? So usually when interest rates go up, usually housing kind of goes down. This cycle.
Yeah, but
We don't see
the
it.
housing market in Florida is established already,
Correct.
and COVID made a point.
Correct.
So, you have negotiating power, but it's not gonna, like, my house when I bought it was 500 grand. Okay. Now we could get close to 9,
Correct.
but I'm not. I could get still, in
Yeah.
that range,
You could get in that range, but my point
but
is,
it's not going to go back to
Correct.
5.
so my point is that interest rates went up, houses didn't follow the
They
pattern
didn't
down
follow
here,
down. No.
right? So now you're stuck to where somebody's, and then there's
And that's all over. Too.
That's all over, but
all over the country.
what's the default to that as well? Interest rates still didn't go down. Housing market stays there. So when a person comes in to buy a house now, right, they have to pay the high interest rate. They have to pay the high house price. They have to pay the high taxes on
Right.
the house price
Yep.
and the high insurance, right?
Yeah.
Problem.
Yeah.
So what gets affected first? Toys, motorcycles. So a lot of people now are not going to go out. Guys that are, understanding, keeping their money, watching their money, aren't going to go out and buy motorcycles,
Or they're gonna sell them for cheap.
or they're going to sell them for cheap. I mean,
Let's
one.
start making a collection.
If I tell you, if you go on like Facebook
Oh,
Market
it's all over.
and look at like bikes, I can look at like
And
I-
they're cheap too.
I find like people are selling, just trying to get out of
They're
them.
trying to get out
I
of
see a lot of those.
See a lot of these,
Yeah.
but I think that goes back to your question. What do I think about Harley? I think Harley's has to figure out how maybe cut down production, you know, maybe like not produce so many different models. Like they tried to do these different models in the last 2 years when
Yeah,
they came out.
Sportsters. They dumped the Sportster and
They
built
did the
that
electric
new
bike,
one.
which was
The
fail.
electric
that
bike
was
was
terrible.
The
bad.
electric, the wire. Like,
Yeah.
they got to stop making. They have to kind of go back to like a core
like an
reproduction.
ordering process.
Yeah, like an order. We did that back in, remember Staten Island, man? I remember going into Staten Island Harley.
Right.
It was like probably the size of this garage.
Right.
They didn't have no bikes.
You open up the door.
You open
and
up the door,
hit
you hit
tire of a
Yeah.
bicycle.
all the product, like all the handlebars were hitting you in your head when you
Yeah,
walked in. Did you
yeah,
ever go to Staten
I
Island
remember
Harley?
that, brother.
I've been there one
Oh,
time.
he was down on
When you walked
when
in,
I was working.
yeah.
when you walked in, he had all Schwinns on one side and all Harleys were in the back.
I know it was crazy. What was funny was when I saw Palm Beach Harley have electric bikes.
Yeah.
And I knew that was an issue, right? When I saw Harley have electric bikes, like the bicycles,
Yeah,
It reminded you of
it
that?
reminded me of like what is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are weird mistakes that like never
I
made.
was going to just bring that up.
Those
That's another
bicycles, a
problem.
lot of shops had
You're
them.
talking
Yeah.
about the electric bike. Now they got the electric bicycle, and it's a flop. I don't see anything moving. There are so many electrical bicycles out there that are cheaper without the name that people will buy because it's a bicycle. It's not a motorcycle.
Correct.
And it's a useless product that they put money into.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Harley is they spend a lot of money on I think that they make a lot of money on. So here's a different problem, right? That people don't look at the aspect of merchandise, right? So think about the history of growing up. I mean, when I grew up, my father always had Harley shirts. You go to an event, go to a dealer. Everywhere you traveled. Remember
Right.
poker chips?
Yeah.
Poker chips used to be free.
Yep.
Yeah. Now you have
I
to
mean,
buy
when I
them.
tell people like poker chips, like you go to there, you get to buy them. But when you used to ride, and Dad, how many miles you put on? Tell everybody again. They don't realize how many miles have you ridden
A
total?
million.
Oh, I've read probably
1
over
billion.
One million
million
miles.
Good song about that, isn't it?
Yeah. No, but how many miles you think you put on?
I probably put on about anywhere from 5 to 700,000
1,000 miles.
Since
He
I've
rode.
been
That's a lot of riding.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of
Lot of
riding.
riding.
So Pops is a good example of the generation dying. There's not many guys that gonna put 700,000 miles on their bikes anymore. You have a few. You got the guys. Jess and Rush. They
Right.
they great. They ride. But how long does that last? I don't know. Like that. But the merchandising, right, was a big part of Harley. Like the people used to travel, go on their bikes
up a
and
shirt.
buy. Nobody buys Harley.
Well, I used to stop at different states when I would go in and ask my wife, because we would have these T-shirts, but the poker chips, they were in a
Yeah,
in
you
a
just grab
container.
one.
And you grab
or,
one.
or you buy in the shirt
And they give you the poker
give
chip.
you the poker chip. Now it's I don't know $250.
I laughed one day. I went into
Yeah,
I was in Fort Myers and we went there and I took a poker chip after we bought something. They're like, you gotta pay for that. I was like, since when?
yeah.
Those are free.
yeah.
You call a cop on your ass. You're stealing a poker
But
chip.
that-
Stole the poker chip.
But that is the company, not the company, not Harley Davidson. That is the dealership
Right.
because they're just nitpicking everything
Well-
to make a buck in order to pay their lights, to pay the mortgage,
Correct.
to pay
Well,
this,
look
to
at
pay
the
that.
size of these
They're
places.
Yeah,
nitpicking.
and that's the
that was the problem.
yeah,
These
and that's
places are
the
like a little
problem
mall,
today.
Right.
Man, they're huge.
It's a
25,000
Yeah,
25,000 square feet back in the day when they did the transition over, because I knew the owner of New York Harley, and they demanded him 25,000 square feet.
correct.
That's what he needed. So he had to look around for a supermarket that was closing down, and he did. He did find
Well,
one.
I think that shows
But
you some of the
Some of them are having built from the
Yeah.
ground up. You know what kind of money we're talking?
Well, 45th Street did that.
well, 45th Street. Well,
Yeah.
here's an example.
Remember, they were on Park Avenue.
That's right.
Well, even
Yeah.
recently, 45th Street Palm Beach Harley was looking to relocate their building.
Oh, they were?
Yeah,
Really?
they still might be, but here's the problem: Harley has all these things in place, like you need to be next to a highway, right? Because that was, but see,
Right.
but this is what I'm talking about evolution.
Yeah.
Back in the day, guys like Pops, even I rode a long time from Florida to New York to Florida a bunch of times on a
Yeah.
shovel head, like
Yeah,
like my
yeah.
back slamming. Like now, like when like you don't know, like these bags and music, like the vibration, like you come off the bike, you're like,
Yeah.
shaking, or.
My last ride from New York to Florida was 23 and a half hours straight
Yeah.
through. But I could never have done that
On a
with my Evo.
But think about that's what
Or-
we also ride, right? We never had
Yeah.
touring bikes, but think about this. Holly had all this in place, right? You got to open up. You have to have this many square feet. You have to be near on the highway, right? Because that's how Holly marketed people, because they would say, we are the brand that's everywhere. So if you would make a trip from New York to California and something happened, there'll be a Holly dealer
Right.
at your disposal on the
Right.
way there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not there no more.
No.
All that generation is
I can tell
dying
you
off,
that.
right? The older generation is dying. The guys that would get on their bikes and do these long hauls, these clubs, and when I say clubs, I'm not talking about like, those type of clubs.
Right.
I'm talking about regular riding
Friends.
clubs,
Yeah. Yeah.
that would get together and do these long trips. And it was great. It's not there no more. So Holly has to figure out, these dealers have to kind of, like when I go to Palm, I talk to them, it's the same thing. Like the corporate forces you to buy this many Harleys,
Yes.
right? You can't just say no. Right. So if they say you have to take 10 CVOs and the CVO is not selling, you got to take the 10 CVOs.
Right.
How do you
Right.
think I got a deal on that?
Correct.
That's 6,000 below MSRP.
Yeah. So now who
I mean,
eats that?
Wow. That's why I grabbed it.
The dealer eats it. So the dealer
Yeah.
now has to find ways to recoup the money. Right. And I think, and it's funny you said that, but who said about ordering Harleys again?
Me.
You. So I think that's one of the strategies. I think Harley needs to downsize, shrink their models out, right? Like take a inventory, what sells, what doesn't sell, shrink the inventory, stop making all these different models. I would even say stop making a CVO, make them very limited.
Yeah.
Like a CVO order, like a dealer gets one for show and then open
And
up the
you
books,
Order it.
and if
yeah.
you want a CVO in different color,
Not a
order
bad
it.
idea.
Right.
Instead of forcing, but corporate has forced it down the throats of the dealers, and that's what people don't understand. I think people
Because
need
the
to
board
understand that
is looking for their money.
corporate wants their money,
Yeah.
because corporate has to pay the board.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a privately owned company, right?
No.
There's a board that, like when we talked about it last week,
No.
there's board members, there's people that invested in that
Yeah,
company. They want
yeah.
their money,
They want their money, and that's
So-
that's
and
why.
they don't care. Like, listen, at the end of the day, we talked like profits are profits.
Right.
If you are not making profits in any business
That's right.
on the board to the people that invested, then it's useless. Like when these guys say they have all these ideas, I love them to go run a company and see how hard it is to run a company, especially through COVID and through
Yeah.
these times and through
Yeah.
financial issues.
Financial times.
When you look
now.
at what Harley's been through since they started, the World Wars
World War,
took tolls on them.
AMF era.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they were going under.
They
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Like
Well, AMF brought them back, but they didn't really do anything extravagant with the bikes, right? It was kind of like
It was an investment.
it was a big investment, but
Yeah.
But they still had a shovel head. You know what I'm saying?
Willie
They
And
still
they-
use the shovel head.
Yeah, and
Willie-
you just changed the look of it. You know
Correct.
what I mean?
But
It was
Willie
just
G brought it back.
Willie G,
because-
but that wasn't AMF.
No. After AMF,
After
he
Willie
brought
G-
him back because the company, I mean, the people building these bikes, all invested,
Correct.
and it was them that
Willie G
brought
was
this.
Willie G was a big part of the staple in the Harley community, like coming out to Willie G, then the Skull,
Yeah.
and the merchandising,
Right.
and getting out there, but
You don't
You know,
get a lot of those people.
we don't have them no
It's
more.
like an
because-
Eddie Van Halen. You're only gonna get one Eddie Van Halen. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get more in the.
Well,
corporate world,
you have
but-
you have the guys like you have a group like the Hamsters that are out there now, and there's a lot of guys in there in that group, and when I say the guys in that group, I mean guys that are innovators,
They're all
Right.
builders.
guys that are
Yeah,
builders,
they're
like
builders. David Perowitz,
Yeah, but
Perowitz,
they're
yeah.
on their own. They're not working for Harley.
Chris,
Chris,
and other guys.
yeah, and like that generation is dying though, right? Like
Yeah.
you got the guys like
We
Perowitz.
got Corey. Corey came in after
Yeah.
his
But
father.
but the problem is
That industry,
How
the
many-
problem with that industry is it's dying because aftermarket is not the way it
It used
was
to be.
anymore.
But you do have other companies that come in behind these guys. You got Thrash and you got Crouch, you got Avon Black. I mean,
Right, because it's a
there's
lot
other
of
people still making
performance
stuff.
now.
yeah, but
these-
they make this stuff. But how many guys?
but they're not Harley.
They
You know
not-
what I'm saying?
no, listen, I think Avon Black's a great company,
Yeah.
right? I think they
They
another
do a good
they
product.
did a great staple, right?
Yeah.
They found a really good niche,
Yeah.
you know, and now they came out recently. I saw them. They come out with some performance like paint schemes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But I
Great.
think it's a great, you know, listen, it's a hard. We live in a different time. Everybody's a now time. Hey, I want to buy something. I want it now, right? So like when we were young, like when
Amazon.
well, it
Give it
is
to me
right.
tomorrow.
So Avon Black smart. They do it. I want it now, right? Is the the quality's great? Is it the perfect? No, but you pay. You're getting what you want. I think the times of like building bikes and custom paint, like you get these guys one offs. You go to the show, you see these guys, but here's another problem. A lot of these guys are trailer queens.
Yeah. Oh,
they,
yeah.
which I got nothing against.
No,
but-
I don't either.
but-
Show bikes.
It's a
they're
show bike.
show bikes.
Show
It's
bike.
also
right.
a $10,000 paint.
Yeah.
But there's guys out
You
there. Don't
need
get
to
me.
have that money in order for you to buy another bike. Because if you have that and that's a trailer queen, you're a biker. I guarantee you got one or two at home that
Oh,
you
yeah.
ride. So
know.
that you have to have the money for that. And today the money's not there.
No, and I just think the younger generation is not like secure. Like they're not working in jobs that are
No.
like you went to sanitation, right?
Yeah.
You went to sanitation. Maybe you were an electrician. Maybe you were in the Iron Workers Union
Right.
across the states.
Right.
You were Teamster,
Right.
right? You knew every month how much money you would make,
Right.
and you could clock in overtime. So like you knew, I can make this much. So I know what I can afford, right? So I know I can buy this bike, and then when I retire, I'm gonna buy. I can buy it. But that generation is dying.
Yeah.
And that as they die off, the younger generation is not the same. They're not the Harley loyalist. When I say Harley loyalist, they like the Harley, but as soon as they get the bike, it's not like they want to rip it apart, and they don't buy the merchandise no more. These kids don't buy Harley. Like they don't go to a dealer and buy T-shirts from them no more.
I used to see them coming into New York Harley, and they would walk out with 2 shopping bags
Of
of T-shirts, jackets, boots. And I'm telling you, I mean, thousands of dollars they would walk out. You don't see that no more. And even the dealers down here,
No.
you go to them, and there's nobody in the clothing place. And if they are, they're at the rack where the leftover rack,
It's my rack.
The clearance
the
rack.
clearance rack.
That's our rack. That's where the retired people go.
That's my shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy, right? We got this funny statement woke, and that's another problem. Like, so when you get these guys that go out there, and you see them, and they're wearing all the Harley stuff, then they're like these other guys make fun of the guys wearing all the Harley stuff, right? So it's like this big weird space we're in. Like, so like I tell my friends, like, oh, who cares if the guy's wearing like, so the guy bought a Harley last week, and he bought a Harley jacket, he bought the Harley boots.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so what? All right.
We
So
all did that.
we all did it when we, like,
I know.
I did when
that.
I was younger.
Yeah.
I got Harley boots.
I still
I mean,
got my
so do
Harley
I.
I
helmet.
got a lot of shit from years ago.
I got Harley boots from like 1998.
I don't
have,
think they fit,
I have
but
my
it's fine.
helmet since '92. They wouldn't let me go home unless I bought a helmet.
I lost weight so I can fit in my pants again in my Harley cutoff. But like, you know what's funny? Like, this generation, these newer generations, not to be they're bad. But like, if somebody wears a Harley shirt, it's like, oh, they're posers, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, and I hate that word because, when the performance kicked it, so I've heard this, we saw this when we went from big baggers, right? And then the big baggers kind of switch, and they're still out there, and they will always be out there. But then we went to the stereos. Now we have this, the performance bikes, right?
Yeah.
And like, you hear these like the old school Harley guys would make fun of the performance guys, right? Who the hell wears? Look at these gay guys wearing T-bars, riding T-bars, being teabagged. I mean, I saw all the memes,
Hello.
But you get on these forums and you look at the guys that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. They make fun of the guys driving T-bars, right? It's the same guys that made fun of the guys that were driving around with 30-inch wheels,
Yeah.
right?
Or ape hangers.
Oh, ape hangers, and
Yeah.
I hate the making fun of thing because that's why the brand is gonna die. Because if you like, who cares if somebody has a niche? Big wheel baggers, I think are cool. I go to shows.
I like them.
I some of these big wheel baggers. I think they're so like.
Oh yeah, they're
I
off
wouldn't
the
drive
chart.
one, but
Well, it's not for me. I
not
want
for me, but
26,
not-
30
but
inch
But
wheels.
you
They look
appreciate.
I
great.
appreciate the
Yeah,
work that still goes
sure.
into
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
these
It's a lot
builds.
of work.
Yeah.
Like some of the trikes. Same thing with the Cholo bikes, right? People like, oh,
Yeah.
I think
The
some
low,
of the Cholo
the
bikes,
low bikes with the long
badass.
pipes.
but
and
some of them
everything.
are just
Yeah.
done right. And
Yeah.
then the
And I
performance
like
bikes.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it never bothers me. What everybody does to their bikes, their business.
It is recycle in theory, like right. Like for me, I think I kind of want to go back to building. My next build is going to be a Road King again.
Road
No.
Kings are great.
Yeah, I'm going back to
Yeah.
a Road King.
I thought of that too.
And I'm mad. My wife and I talk about this all the time. That I'm so mad. I sold the one you had the picture, my 2013 CVO Road King.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite bikes.
I had a Road King. I loved it.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah,
what?
mine
It
had
wasn't
a
the
Road
look I wanted, but the bike on the road with no weight on that front end, 110,
Yeah.
no problem.
You could
Yeah.
throw a
Unbelievable.
visor on.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a windshield.
I had a
don't get me wrong.
windshield too. My windshield actually came up to here because I had the King windshield because of all the traveling I would do. So if I got caught up with a whole bunch of bugs, I was always wishing I had a windshield wiper that I could just.
Somebody
do
made
this
one for the
thing.
helmet.
Yeah. No, I mean for the windshield. The windshield came up to here. I looked.
Yeah, he had no
I
problem.
literally, it was like driving a car. I literally looked through the windshield,
Yeah.
and I loved it. I loved it.
But that's where, like, when you ask me about Harley, I think Harley will make it out. I think what will happen is we'll see like a blip, like where maybe they go
a
back,
change.
yeah, change. They kind of cut down their models. Stop making dealers have to be 50,000 square feet. Stop making dealers
Well, they
have to
hurt
buy
themselves in
Yeah.
a sense. Yeah.
because you're trying to make profits to pay to the board, to the investors, and then the dealer has to suffer, right?
And the dealer's got to make money to cover 25,000 square feet.
They're asking me to vote, and they're asking me to vote on the 14th of May. And if you watched our video last week and maybe a couple of weeks, we announced who's on the board, what their background is, and literally, I'll be honest with you, I'm not voting because it doesn't matter who I vote for. That same people are going to be on that board.
Well, I think
They're not adding people from the outside. It's
Well-
the same people, and they're just mixing them up.
Well, what he's saying is the people on the board are the investors
Yeah,
that are investing.
yeah,
in
some of these
Harley
guys are
yeah,
a part invested. But here's the problem: when you vote for board members, right? I mean, in any company or company that's public, especially public companies, right? Not private, there's always politics involved, right?
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's profit,
It's money.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't care who you put as a CEO of a company or a CFO. If somebody's not getting paid, they don't care about us, right?
That's
They're
right.
not thinking. They're not going to sit at a bar with us and drink a beer,
No.
ask us how our Harley's going down the road, right? If these bikes are being made and no profits being made, that's a problem, right? And somebody has to figure out a way to make profit. And the profit is not figuring out what we personally want, because everybody that has self-influence, like that's got their heart into something, never makes a financial decision right anyway,
Yeah.
right? When you love something so much, you go out and spend money that you probably shouldn't spend, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine if
Yeah.
you had a CEO of a board of a company that felt the same way. Hey,
Right.
Dad, what do you want? You want that? We'll build that next week. Eric, what did you want, Eric? You will build that next week. Oh, what you
I
want?
want 200 horsepower.
Yeah, you want 200 horsepower. You want this? Oh, and what? Oh, wait. We're gonna do that all for you for the price of $10,000. So we're gonna give you 200 horsepower, speakers, A10 lights, inverted front end, and I'm gonna get the price down to 10 grand. That's great. And 2 months later, we'll be upside down. The company will be in the red and chapter 11 done.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
there's certain things though, Harley,
Makes sense.
like their new Fat Boy, they want $25,000. To me, that's just insane.
well,
It's a lot of money for a Fat Boy.
but here I have an argument against that. All right, so we're old enough to know buying cars,
Right.
right, and leasing, right. So we probably all bought a car or leased a car in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back in 1999, 2000, I bought an S4, right? Audi lease. You know how much that lease was? $389
For an Audi,
for an Audi. How much you think that lease is now?
$699.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
$899.
Wow.
It's the price of the time.
Yeah.
So like if
But you know
it's
what?
hard to cars are the same
We
way.
saw those prices, so now it's like
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
I just
hard
think
to let
people
go.
Yeah, I think people have a hard time
Yeah.
adjusting. Like same thing with my truck. Listen, I bought I leased a 2022 F-150 for like $48,000. My lease was $480 something because of COVID, right? So I got a great deal because they
It's
gave
still not bad. Yeah.
no.
That's a good price.
Last month I went to go trade it in, $699 for the same truck.
Oh God.
Wow.
So I bought my truck out, right? But it's the
Cheaper.
same thing with Harley. When people
Yeah.
they say, "Oh, this is expensive," it's 2020. It's gonna be 2025.
Yeah.
Somebody has to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I get it.
And if
I get it.
if I ask you, what would you charge for the Fat Boy?
Right now, realistically, I would think 18, 19.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then when you realize that
Well,
That-
you're not going to make any money.
you're gonna make no money on it, right?
It just seems awfully high for a soft tail when these are selling for 24, 25. As you say, I don't even know what the new prices are.
But the engineering is the same almost now.
But this
days.
has so much more on it. Why is a Fat Boy that has less stuff on it as much as that?
Well,
Again, you know what I mean?
it's
But then
profit
again,
loss.
it's trying to say why is that 50 grand and that Mustang's 50 grand? You know.
Well, there's a
Now you got four
Yeah.
tires, leather, air conditioning, electric windows. You know.
Protection.
Yeah, a lot of protection. I got airbags all around me, right?
that bike has airbags. You didn't know that?
I didn't know. Hopefully, I
up the
never
side
have to find
covers.
out.
No, I mean, and I think that's the problem where Harley's gonna lie. How did they restructure, and cut models out? Go back to I almost feel like they should go back. Dealers should not have 30, like they shouldn't have all these bikes on the floor,
They have a lot.
right?
I mean, West Palm's got a shitload.
Oh, you're going to deal. I think they should cut back. They don't have to be 50,000 square feet. Make it so much. It's more of a commodity, like to own a Harley again, right? Not where everybody Joe and Mo, and that was the other problem. All these people, what we don't see is all these guys going out there buying these Harleys and not paying their loans anymore,
Yeah.
right? And then there's
Repo.
the repo, and then it's just it doesn't affect Harley, but Harley financing, it's just
Yeah.
they got to find
Now
a
they
way.
stockpile all these used bikes.
Yeah,
And now they can't get
Get
rid of the used bikes. They can't get rid of the new bikes. Or they start getting rid of the used bikes because nobody's going to pay the money for the new bikes.
and these deals got screwed like COVID, right? There was a whole thing talked about this, that when COVID, with car dealers and motorcycles, they were buying all these used bikes and all these used cars.
Yeah.
And there was guys that do financial plan, like thought process long term, was like, this is going to be a nightmare because now they're stuck with all these old bikes, right? All these bikes they bought because they needed inventory, and now they got Harley corporate tells you now you got to take inventory of 150 bikes. You have to take it.
Yeah.
Now you got all these bikes, all these used bikes.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a profit loss to that.
Right.
I mean, looking at square footage, you go down to Alligator Harley. Now that place is
Yeah,
huge.
that place.
That
That's
place
a
is huge.
supermarket.
Did you know there's an upstairs where he has bikes they store for
Really?
customers and they maintain them for like if they were out for the summer? I didn't even know the upstairs was there. Guy took me on a tour, showed me what other bikes I was looking at
Yeah, I
at the
didn't
time.
know there was enough.
He
It's
has
like
an
a
upstairs.
storage.
Yeah,
But-
they have an elevator that
but-
brings the bikes up, and he brings them all in there, and they maintain them, change the oil, charge the batteries.
On a given time,
And I mean,
you go
that place is huge.
you go to Treasure Coast Harley, and outside they got about 100 bikes there, used bikes, right? All outside.
Yeah,
Got a lot. And that's one of your smaller ones. That one's been there a long time.
yeah, that's one of the small ones,
Yeah.
Space Coast. But
And you think about it, Space Coast is huge. That place is huge
Well,
too.
yeah.
well, some of these guys that own these dealers, they're wealthy.
Yeah, I
what's
have-
what's his name that owns this one?
Oh, he's got like
The car,
4 or 5
the car
of them,
dealer,
right?
Teddy Morris.
No, Teddy Morse don't own
No,
Palm
he's
Beach.
got
Oh.
Ross Myers up
No,
north.
that's another.
What's
That's
his name? Rush. He owned Lamborghini. He owns like 12 or 13
dealership.
dealerships. He
Yeah.
owns the one in Fort Myers.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, he's got
right.
Rockstar. and all.
Yeah, Rockstar. He's got all of them. I mean, I think sometimes some of these deals,
Alligator Rally.
yeah, they probably offset some of their costs, because they have so much money and they're writing stuff off. But it only lasts so long.
Yeah.
But I think the new bikes are nice,
I love the technology. I'm happy.
except for that big screen.
Yeah. Wow.
I feel like somebody's gonna be staring at that big screen one day
It's
and
gonna
not
go
pay
out.
attention to the light. It's like
Uh,
it's like
Well,
a
he's
big
not having. He's not
LCD
getting
screen
that,
in front of
so
your face.
He
Like,
ain't getting that bike.
He's not getting.
I ain't getting
We
that
won't
bike.
let him
don't.
get that.
I,
No.
I'm not getting that bike because there's too many buttons on the hand of. I don't
We'll
even
get Grail.
work my buttons.
you can Grail is an option.
Grail?
I tell you what's mesmerizing on that screen when you're riding and everything lights up like a Christmas tree, and you're like, "Oh shit!" You know, the first time I rode it, they had some kinks. Everything lit up. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I'm riding. I just got back from a ride around the lake or something, and I was on Southern Boulevard, so I was like, "All right, I'm close to home." But everything was lit up. Nothing worked. You know, I couldn't clear anything. I was like, "What? You know, what the hell's going on?"
Yeah, they got their glitches. I mean, there's
Yeah.
still some glitches, but that's the go with M8 had it.
Yeah.
The original when the M8 first came out, they had the glitches.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great bike. I think they made a lot of improvements. I think I think they're in the right direction on building the bikes. I mean, I don't know what else like this woke thing. I just people need to get that word. We slap the shit out of everybody that says woke. You with me?
Richie's favorite.
I
word.
woke up this morning. That's all I know.
Hey, see, you're awake.
That word's got to
You're
go
woke.
away.
So, all right.
All right.
Gotta go eat dinner. It's that time.
I thought we were fasting.
Fasting. You're
So
fasting.
we actually extended
Wow,
our
it's the
video
extended version.
That I knew
30
it was gonna happen
minutes.
with me on.
because
Well, you got to come back because we didn't finish a lot of
Because-
stuff.
I know we got to talk a lot.
Yeah,
there-
yeah.
there's so much more information we have to get from Chris that we are going to ask him to come back again. Would you come back
Yeah,
again?
and I think I might bring some guests.
I think you
Yeah,
should
bring
do
some
that.
guests.
I think
Don't-
maybe
You
maybe
don't
we
have
that
to
bottle
tell
the
us.
next time.
You could
I'll
just
finish the
bring.
bottle. I think we get some guys on. Maybe we get like George on.
Oh, that would
Yeah,
be
That'd be
great.
great.
We get Mike on.
That would be.
Yeah, we could do
Awesome.
a
We
remote.
do remote.
I,
Voting.
I
Get
actually-
into
He just started his own YouTube channel.
who?
George.
Did he?
Him and his wife, and
Oh.
got about 1,900 viewers already. And I just clicked on as a subscriber because now they're building her bike.
That's right. They're doing it, and they're great. George is great. Listen, George is a
He's a sweetheart.
yeah. Like,
I don't know him, but I could
George is
just the personality of him.
George is a younger guy. Like think about us when we were younger,
Yeah,
right?
that's
and
exactly
and
how I
he's
look at it.
enthusiastic
He's,
and
he's a
he's
younger
into
me.
it, and
He's
he's
excited.
he's
about
excited
Yeah,
about like
he's
listen.
a younger me.
And those are the guys like yeah. See, you're about the same height, but but my point is it wasn't for guys like Mike and these guys and Cycle Rammer and Kurt, all these guys that have led the path, and
Yeah.
Mike being kind of like in the middle.
He's the
age.
older.
He's
Yeah.
not the oldest, but
Yeah.
look at Mike from A1. I mean, Mike Beelan is took shop from here in West Palm.
Yeah.
He's been in
That's
the
what we're
motorcycle
talking
business,
about, right.
drag races,
Right.
like and then
Bill's drag racing
Yeah.
stuff.
and then built a company and built smart enough to think about how do I expand my business, right? Not just be a motorcycle shop. How do I get into something I can reproduce, right?
Yeah.
And then do build motors and cranks and
Yeah.
I mean, it's a smart thing. Those are the guys that I think are important to this community because those are the guys that keep the community motoring. People like keep the enthusiast people buying bikes.
Right.
And George is one of those guys. He's a younger version, right? He's excited, gets on, and wants to drag race everybody, but builds his bikes,
Yeah.
right? And then those guys, those are the ones that will keep. Look at all these like Daytona. What's his name from Daytona? I forget his name again. That was a big builder out there.
Billy Lane and all.
No, not Billy Lane.
No, Daytona.
It will drive me crazy. Next time we'll talk about. But he died. A lot of these guys, that were part of this community about building motors. Like, and that's why I laugh when people talk about performance motorcycles. Performance bikes have been around a long time. It's not a new name. Like guys have been building,
Oh,
hot
had
rod
horsepower.
motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for a long
Yeah,
time.
back in the day, back in the 70s and 60s, there was a guy called Huey Schaefer.
Yep.
Do you remember Huey
Yep.
Schaefer? And he used to, Mado and see,
Modern.
from New York. From New York. And he used to build, he was well known for strokers back
Strokers.
then. And he used to stamp HS on the flywheel. So we had the little hole on the side for the timer. And as you would turn it around, HS would come up. You know, the line would be here, and then HS would come up, and these are the guys that really brought this whole industry.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, talking about these
the way
guys
it
have been
is
drag
today.
racing Harleys forever. Like sometimes you go to Mike's Cash Day. We'll talk about that in part 2.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, we'll leave it there. That we have a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
All right,
Eric's
good.
about to faint. He lost about 10
Yeah.
pounds.
Yeah.
I need food. Stop touching me.
You know what's gonna happen? He's gonna lose muscle.
I know.
That's why if he doesn't,
He doesn't want to
put,
sit close to me.
if he
feel
doesn't
like
put the chicken, he needs the
No,
chicken.
actually, I need you
Right.
to sit closer so you're closer to the mic.
Don't
Mic
get
check,
too
1,
close.
2.
Anyway,
I'm getting
thanks for
jealous.
coming, buddy. Thanks for coming. We
Thank you,
appreciate
brother.
it.
Love you, Pops.
Love you. I love
Well-
you, bro.
Stop texting everybody.
All right.
All right. All right.
We gotta talk some more.
We'll see you guys next time.
Next Wednesday.
Richie, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe, hit the notification, and do me a favor. You know, go in the comments, ask some questions, help us out. You know, I'd be willing to answer your questions or bring them on to our next episode, which would be next Tuesday. So,
Wednesday.
next Wednesday.
It's the leap month.
Don't you have an
Oh, that's right. It's my anniversary. All right.
Yeah. so
Unless
the
Debbie
next,
wants you to just
next
come here
Wednesday.
instead.
well, we're going to be on the next 2 Wednesdays.
Yeah, the next
Next
two.
2
Yeah.
Wednesdays.
Next
Because
2
the
Wednesdays.
Wednesday after that, I'm going to be doing ours on a cruise ship.
What do you say?
Doing something on a cruise ship. I don't know.
I'm
I don't
doing
wanna
it-
know.
I'm
Actually,
doing
I
this-
think Richie needs to eat.
I think he needs to eat.
Blood,
Did
low
anybody
blood
bring his
sugar.
oxygen tank?
Yeah.
Nobody's got the oxygen tank
I
hooked
know.
up.
I got the compressor over
need
Where
there.
is
fuel
it?
for my muscle. I
Compressor.
need fuel for my head.
All right, guys.
With that,
Thank
say
you.
later.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
CRC
And
signing
remember,
out.
we're
Can't
on all the
remember crap.
platforms. We're on Apple,
Woo,
iHeartRadio,
it's freaking hot in
Podcast,
here.
Amazon. We're on all of
You fancy.
them. Yeah.
Summer's here.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah. Spotify.
We're still on it.
All right. Yeah, we're still on.
Still on.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it up.
All right.